My son the pilot called me from the runway. Mom, something's wrong. My sister-in-law is on my flight to Paris. Froze. Because at that exact moment, I could hear her singing in the shower upstairs. Welcome to Folktales Hub. Please, while you are here, hit the subscribe button and share this story with friends. Hello friend. Come, sit with me for a while. I want to tell you a story. It's a story about family, about trust, and about a secret that lived right under my nose, in the one place I thought was safest. My own home. My name is Eleanor. For most of my life, I've lived in a quiet, sunny little town called Cedar Cove. It's the kind of place where everyone knows your name, where the smell of the ocean is always in the air, and where my greatest joy was my family. My husband, my rock, passed away 10 years ago, and since then my world has revolved around my 2 boys. My oldest is David. He's a good man, a hard-working architect, serious and kind. He married a woman named Chloe. Oh, Chloe, she was like the daughter I never had. She was beautiful, always put together, and she seemed to love our family so much. They have a son, my little sunshine, Leo. He's 7 years old, with a laugh that could light up the darkest room. My younger son is Jake. He's a pilot, always chasing the clouds, living his dream. I was so proud of my little family. My life was simple and it was full of love. This story starts on a morning that felt just like any other. The sun was streaming through the kitchen window. I was washing the breakfast dishes, listening to the familiar sounds of the house. David had already left for work. Leo's school bus had just rumbled away down the street. And Chloe was upstairs. I heard her footsteps above me, and then her voice, soft and sweet as always. Eleanor, I'm just going to hop in the shower, okay? Of course, dear, I called back, smiling. This was our routine. It was comfortable. It was safe. I had just put the last plate away when the phone rang. I dried my hands on my apron and picked it up. Mom! It was Jake. His voice was like a burst of sunshine itself, full of that energy he always carried. Jake. Honey, is everything all right? I asked, so happy to hear from him. He laughed. Everything's great, Mom. Just on a layover at the airport. Had a minute and wanted to hear your voice. We chatted for a bit. He told me about his flight, about the weather, all the usual things. But then his tone changed. Got slower, more serious. Hey, Mom. This is going to sound weird, he said, hesitating. But, is Chloe there at the house with you? Actually laughed. I looked towards the stairs, where I could still faintly hear the shower running. Of course she is, sweetheart. She's upstairs showering right now. I just spoke to her. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. So long I could hear the faint hum of the airport terminal behind him. Mom, he said, and his voice was now a low, serious whisper. That's impossible. What do you mean? I asked, my smile fading. I mean it's impossible, he repeated. Because I am holding her passport in my hands. Right now. She just boarded my flight. We're headed to Paris. The world didn't stop turning. The clock didn't stop ticking. But for me in my kitchen everything just froze. His words didn't make any sense. They were like 2 puzzle pieces from completely different boxes trying to fit together. Jake, don't be silly, I said, my voice a little too high. You must be mistaken. Must be someone who looks like her. I just saw her. I just talked to her. Mom, I'm not mistaken, he said, and I could hear the utter confusion in his voice. I know my own sister-in-law. Her picture is right here. Her name is right here. I just walked through the cabin to double-check. She's sitting in first class. She's right there. She's with some guy in a fancy suit. There, they look close. My heart started to hammer against my ribs. This wasn't a joke. Jake wouldn't do that. He was earnest, honest. Just then the water shut off upstairs. I heard the bathroom door open. Eleanor. Who is it? Chloe's voice floated down the stairs. Panic. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure she could hear it. It's just Sarah from next door. I lied, my voice shaking. I hurried into the living room, away from the stairs. Just girl talk, I added, trying to sound normal. I peeked out and saw Chloe at the top of the stairs, her head tilted, her hair wrapped in a towel. She smiled and went back into the bedroom. I put the phone back to my ear, my hand trembling. Jake, she's right here. She just asked me who was on the phone. Are you sure? Mom, he said, and his voice was flat, certain. I am looking right at her. She's on this plane. I don't really remember saying goodbye. I think I just hung up the phone. I stood there in my quiet living room, the morning sun feeling suddenly cold and harsh. My knees felt weak, and I sank down onto the sofa. My mind was racing, but it was also completely blank. How could this be? If Chloe was here, who was on that plane? And if the woman on the plane was Chloe, who, in God's name, was in my house? Few minutes later, Chloe came downstairs. She was wearing a fresh yellow sundress, her hair damp and curling around her shoulders. She was smiling. I'm heading to the farmer's market early today, she said, picking up her woven basket. Need anything? Those tomatoes you like are probably in season. She sounded exactly like Chloe. She looked exactly like Chloe. She was Chloe. Yes, tomatoes please, I managed to say, my throat dry as dust. She smiled, nodded, and walked out the door. I watched her go, my soul in turmoil. I didn't believe Jake was lying. But I couldn't believe what was right in front of my eyes was a lie either. That was the moment the first tiny crack appeared in my perfect world. And over the next few days I started to see things. Little things. Things I'd brushed off before. I remembered times when Chloe's handwriting looked different. One day neat and precise. The next day, a little messier, like she was using her other hand. I'd asked her about it once. Oh, just practicing, she'd said with a light laugh. Trying to keep my brain sharp. I'd believed her. Why wouldn't I? Then there were her moods. Some days she was the Chloe I knew. Patient, singing songs to Leo, laughing with David. Other days she was short, impatient. She'd snap at Leo for spilling a little milk. She'd seem distracted, distant. I told myself everyone has bad days. Being a mom is hard. Being a wife is hard. But after Jake's phone call, those little things started to feel huge. They felt heavy. They felt like clues. One afternoon, little Leo was showing me his homework. He pointed to 2 pages. Look, Grandma, he said, his small finger tracing the words. Mommy helped me with this yesterday, and her writing was so pretty. But today she did it with her left hand, and it's all wobbly. She said her right hand was tired. My blood ran cold. Later, my good friend and neighbor Martha stopped by to return a pie dish. Eleanor, she said, lowering her voice. This might sound strange, but is everything okay with Chloe? I saw her yesterday and she waved and was so cheerful. Today, I saw her at the market and she looked right through me like she didn't know me. The cracks were getting wider. The foundation of my reality was shaking. I started a little notebook. I know it sounds silly, like I was a detective in my own home. But I had to. I had to write it down to prove to myself I wasn't going crazy. Tuesday, 3 p.m. Chloe to market. Cheerful. Wore blue dress. Returned 5:30 p.m. Wore green shirt. Seemed quiet. Wednesday, sang Leo to sleep. Twinkle, twinkle. Thursday, yelled at Leo for tracked in mud. No singing. It was breaking my heart to write these things. But I had to know. The kind, loving woman Jake described on the phone. And the sometimes warm, sometimes cold woman in my house. They couldn't both be the same person. The fear was a constant knot in my stomach. Who was sharing my home? And what had happened to the real Chloe? The weight of the secret was getting too heavy to carry alone. I felt like I was walking through a dream or maybe a nightmare. Smiling at the woman I lived with, making breakfast, talking about the weather. All while this terrifying question screamed inside my head. Who are you? I needed to talk to someone. I needed to hear a friendly voice tell me I wasn't losing my mind. So I called my oldest friend, Beatrice. We met at our usual little coffee shop on the corner. The bell on the door jingled, and there she was, with her kind eyes and her no-nonsense attitude. Eleanor, she said, sitting down and taking my hand. Your voice on the phone. Tell me everything. And I did. The words tumbled out of me. Jake's call, the passport, the double, the handwriting, the moods, everything. I showed her my little notebook, my shameful list of suspicions. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Beatrice listened quietly, her face growing more and more serious. When I finished, she didn't call me crazy. She didn't laugh. She looked me straight in the eye. You are not imagining this, Eleanor, she said, her voice firm. Your gut is screaming at you for a reason. You have to listen. For David's sake. For Leo's sake. You have to find out the truth. Her belief in me was like a life raft. I wasn't alone anymore. But her words were also terrifying. Finding out the truth meant I might have to face something I didn't want to see. The very next day I got my chance. It was a Saturday. David was working. Leo was at a friend's house. The house was quiet. Chloe came downstairs. I'm just running to the market, Eleanor, she said, picking up her basket. She was sweet, smiling. It was a good day, Chloe. The moment the door closed behind her, something clicked in me. Beatrice's words echoed in my mind. You have to find out. I grabbed my sweater, my heart pounding like a drum, and I followed her. I kept a safe distance, hiding behind trees and parked cars, feeling like a spy in my own town. She walked the usual route to the town square. But then, instead of turning right toward the busy market, she turned left. Down a narrow, dusty lane called Driftwood Alley. This was a poorer part of Cedar Cove. The houses were smaller, older, closer together. My Chloe, who loved nice things, who lived in our comfortable home. What was she doing here? I watched, my mouth dry, as she stopped in front of a small, weathered house with a faded blue door. She knocked twice, glanced around, and went inside. I stood there, frozen behind an old truck, my mind reeling. Why? Who was in there? This was it. This was the secret. I knew I had to go back. Had to know. But I was so scared. What would I find? What would I do? A couple of days later, I gathered all my courage. I brought a family photo with me. One of all of us smiling with Chloe right in the center. I walked back to Driftwood Alley. My legs felt like lead. An older woman was sitting on her porch nearby, shelling peas. I walked up to her, my voice shaky. Excuse me, ma'am. I'm looking for my daughter-in-law. Have you seen this woman? I showed her the photo. The woman squinted at it, then nodded, pointing her knife toward the very same blue door. Oh, sure. She comes and goes from there all the time. Number 14. My heart dropped into my shoes. It was true. It was all true. I walked to the blue door. I took a deep, shuddering breath and I knocked. The door opened slowly. And there she was. Chloe. But it wasn't her. The woman standing in front of me had Chloe's face, her hair, her eyes. But her eyes were different. They were scared. Tired. And she was holding a cleaning rag, wearing simple, worn-out clothes. I just stared speechless. See, Chloe, finally stammered. The woman flinched and tried to close the door, but another voice came from inside the house. It's okay, Isabel. Let her in. It's time. A younger woman appeared behind her. She had a kind, intelligent face. Please come in, she said gently. My name is Maria. I'm Isabel's friend. I think you deserve to know the truth. I stepped into the small, humble living room. It was clean but sparse. And in a corner, an old man lay on a bed, coughing weakly. The woman who looked like Chloe, Isabel, stood with her head bowed, crying softly. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I'm not Chloe. My name is Isabel. The story they told me. I could never have imagined it in my wildest dreams. Isabel and Chloe were twins. They were born into a very poor family right here in Cedar Cove. The family could only afford to keep one baby. So they kept Chloe. They were going to give Isabel away to a stranger. But a kind nurse who lived in this very house, she couldn't bear it. She adopted Isabel herself. She raised her as her own daughter. She's the woman in the bed, now sick and frail. Maria was her caregiver and Isabel's best friend. The twins never knew each other. They grew up worlds apart. Chloe in a comfortable home, Isabel right here in poverty. But a few years ago they met by chance. Chloe was shocked to see her mirror image. And that's when she came up with her plan. Chloe had met a wealthy man from France. She wanted that life of luxury. But she was married to David. She had Leo. She couldn't just disappear. So she found her twin sister. She offered Isabel money. A lot of money. Money desperately needed for her adoptive mother's medicine, to pretend to be her. When Chloe wanted to sneak away to be with her rich boyfriend, she would call Isabel. Isabel would come to our house, be Chloe for a few hours or a day, and then leave. That's why Chloe seemed so different sometimes. Because sometimes it wasn't her. The sweet, loving days were Isabel. The cold, impatient days were the real Chloe, growing tired of her double life. I listened to all of this, sitting in that small chair, feeling the world I knew crumble into dust. The deception was so deep, so cruel. She used her own sister. She lied to my son. She abandoned my grandson. All for money. All for a fancy life. I looked at Isabel, sobbing, her heart broken with guilt. She wasn't a villain. She was a victim too. A desperate daughter trying to save her mother. I knew what I had to do. The truth had to come out. For David. For Leo. I went home, my heart shattered but my resolve firm. Call Jake. Jake, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. I need you to come home. I need you to bring any proof you have from that flight. It's time. Then I planned a family dinner. I cooked David's favorite meal. I set the table. I was setting the stage for the hardest night of our lives. The evening of the dinner, the air in our house felt thick and heavy, like right before a storm. I had set the table with our best plates. The smell of roasted chicken and herbs filled the house, but it felt like a disguise, masking the tension that was bubbling underneath. David came home, tired but smiling at the nice dinner. Leo was chattering excitedly about his day. And then there was Chloe. She was there, smiling, playing her part. But I saw the nervous glance she gave me. She could feel that something was off. We sat down to eat. We started passing the food around. The conversation was light, but it felt fragile, like glass about to crack. Then the doorbell rang. Everyone looked up, confused. We weren't expecting anyone. "I'll get it," I said, my heart hammering. "Open the door." There was Jake, his face grim and determined. And right behind him stood Isabel. She looked terrified, but she gave me a small, brave nod. I led them into the dining room. The moment they walked in, everything stopped. Leo looked from Chloe to Isabel and back again. His little face a mask of total confusion. "Mommy, how are there two of you?" David dropped his fork. It clattered loudly on his plate. What is this?" he stammered, staring at the two identical women. Chloe shot up from her chair, her face white with fury. "What is the meaning of this, Eleanor? Is this some kind of joke?" "Sit down, Chloe," I said, my voice surprisingly calm. "It's time for the jokes to be over." I started to talk. I told them everything. I told them about Jake's phone call from the airport. I told them about the passport. I looked at David and Leo, my heart breaking for them with every word. "The woman you sometimes lived with," I said, my voice softening as I looked at Isabel. "The kind one, the one who sang you to sleep, Leo. That wasn't Chloe. This is her sister, Isabel." Chloe was screaming now, calling me a liar, saying I was crazy. But then Jake stepped forward. He placed a pile of papers on the table. Flight manifests, copies of the passport stamps. "It's all here, David," Jake said, his voice hard. "She was on my flight to Paris. She's been going there for months." Then Maria, Isabel's friend, stepped into the room. She looked at Chloe with clear, disappointed eyes. "I saw you," she said quietly. "With him. The man named Antoine. I heard you planning. I saw you give Isabel money." The evidence was everywhere. It was undeniable. Chloe's mask finally slipped. The anger drained from her face, replaced by a cold, ugly smirk. She looked at David, and there was no love left in her eyes. Only contempt. Fine. It's all true, she said, her voice icy. I'm sick of this boring small-town life. I'm sick of pretending to be the perfect little wife and mother. Antoine can give me everything. Real life. You, David. Dull. You're nothing. The silence in the room after she spoke was louder than any scream. I saw David's heart break in front of me. He physically shrank, the light in his eyes going out. But it was Leo who shattered me. He started to cry, big, heaving sobs. Mommy, why are you being so mean? He wailed. Isabel, who had been standing quietly, tears streaming down her face, couldn't take it anymore. She ran to Leo and wrapped him in a hug. It's okay, sweetheart, she whispered, rocking him. It's okay. I'm here. Chloe just rolled her eyes, grabbed her purse and walked out the door. She didn't look back. Not at David, not at her crying son. She just left. The door clicked shut and it was over. The aftermath was quiet and painful. The divorce was quick. Chloe didn't fight for anything. She signed the papers and vanished to France with her wealthy man. She left without a single word to Leo. David was a ghost of himself. He moved through the house, hollowed out by betrayal. He tried to be strong for Leo, but the hurt was so deep. My heart ached for my son. But in the darkness, a small light began to grow. Her name was Isabel. She started coming over every day. Not because she was paid to, but because she cared. She felt immense guilt for her part in the lie, and she wanted to make it right. She brought food. She sat with David and just listened when he needed to talk. And she devoted herself to Leo. She was the one who healed his little broken heart. She was the one who helped him with his homework, who sang him the same lullabies he loved, who held him when he cried for the mother who abandoned him. One afternoon, I was in the garden when I heard Leo's little voice from inside. Mom, Isabel, can we read a story? He called her Mom. And he said it so naturally, so easily. I peeked inside and saw Isabel look up at David, her eyes wide, as if asking for permission. And I saw David look at her, and for the first time in months, I saw a real, gentle smile on his face. He nodded. Love doesn't always come in the way we expect. Sometimes it's hidden in the shadows, waiting for the truth to set it free. Months later, we had another family dinner. The air was lighter now. We were laughing again. Leo was telling a silly joke. And then David got down on one knee. He looked up at Isabel, his eyes full of tears, but this time they were tears of hope. Isabel, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You walked into our lives in the middle of a terrible lie. But your love, your kindness. It's the most real thing I've ever known. You healed my son. You healed me. Would you do me the incredible honor of becoming my wife? Will you be Leo's mother for real? Isabel burst into tears, happy tears, and nodded yes. Leo launched himself at them both, yelling yes, yes. And we all laughed and cried together. Their wedding was small. Just family in our backyard, under a canopy of twinkling lights. Jake was the best man. Leo was the ring bearer, so proud and serious. I stood there, watching my son look at his bride with a love I thought he'd lost forever. It wasn't the ending I had ever imagined. The path to get here was paved with betrayal and heartache. But it led us to a better place. It led us to Isabel. The truth hurt us deeply. But in the end it didn't break us. Freed us. It freed us from a beautiful lie and led us to an imperfect, but honest and beautiful truth. I still sit on my porch in the evenings. I listen to the sounds of my family inside. David and Isabel talking, Leo laughing. The wound of Chloe's betrayal will always be a scar, but it doesn't hurt anymore. It just reminds us of what we lost, and what we so miraculously found. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember, even when the world seems to be falling apart, have courage. The truth, no matter how painful, has a way of leading you home.